We're coming to you from this whole national cemetery where those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of the nation are laid to rest. Now, this cemetery covers an area of 1.4 million square meters and is the home to the remains of around 180,000 fallen heroes. So in this week's edition of Foreign Correspondents, we talk about the concept of remembrance as we mark the month of June, which is Memorial Month here in South Korea.
국가원수부터 혁명용사까지 우리 곁을 떠난 독립유공자와 국가유공자, 참전용사, 경찰관과 소방관, 의사자와 국가사회 공헌자들이 함께 잠들어 있습니다. 현충원은 살아있는 애국의 현장입니다.
I'm now at the Relics exhibition hall of this whole national cemetery, and joining me today is our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome on board. Thank you for being here. Past Memorial Day on June 6th, President Moon Jae-in delivered the following commemorative address.
나라를 위한 일에 헛된 죽음은 없습니다. 오늘의 우리는 수많은 희생 위에 존재하기 때문입니다.
Every month in June in South Korea is Memorial Month, and many Koreans commemorate Memorial Day by putting up a flag outside their homes and holding a moment of silence. So are there similar days, such as to the ones that we have here, in terms of memorializing and honoring the dead?
Well, there is Memorial Day in the U.S., and it is a day of remembrance for those fallen soldiers. Also, we have July 4th, which is our national day, and we're celebrating the independence of the United States on July 4th, 1776.
So how is the day observed? What kind of activities are carried out usually?
Well, Memorial Day, sometimes there are parades and so forth, and a lot of statements. But there are parades, there are observances like that. And July 4th is also an occasion for parades and speeches and celebrations and fireworks and all that kind of thing. Particularly on July 4th, not so much on Memorial Day, but there are parades and services and speeches.
Okay.
Well, in Germany, you have the Day of National Unification. That's basically where everyone celebrates the unity of Germany. But when it comes to honoring fallen soldiers, there's no specific day. I mean, we're basically at the other side, right? I mean, when I think about fallen soldiers, for example, I think about the war memorial in my hometown Berlin, where the Soviet Union soldiers, were commemorated, because I think German soldiers in the Second World War killed more than 20 million Russian soldiers. So I think I cannot really historically just think about German fallen soldiers and honor them, because they were part of the Nazi regime. That's the last national war that Germany fought. So it's really complicated.
Okay. And what about for Russia?
There is no specific memorial date in Russia, but I think we could call the May 9th celebrations, which is called the Victory Day. It's the day when the World War, Great Patriotic War have been over, with the victory over Germany. And the biggest one, of course, is the military parade on the Red Square. And also it's very common on this day to visit the parents and to spend time together, because there is not probably a single family where at least one person haven't been killed during the war. So this is the day for national memory about that.
South Korea's modern history has been a chaotic one, having endured many difficult times ranging from Japan's colonial occupation and the Korean War to the democratization movement. Now, the Seoul National Cemetery is divided into several sections. In South Korea, they are all categorized as persons of national merit, and there are some 850,000 people classified as such. So what's the equivalent of this whole national cemetery in Germany?
In Germany, there's really no equivalent. Really, I've come actually often to that place here. It's just beautiful, and it's also impressive to see how, the soldiers from the Korean War who lay here at peace. In Germany, war has quite a different meaning. It's a nation that has started the First World War, especially the Second World War. So we don't have that culture of worshipping soldiers and fallen soldiers. So it really doesn't exist anything that is similar to here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll move to Russia.
In Russia, there is not a direct equivalent to this national cemetery, but in 2013 only, the Russian government have set up a national cemetery. It's called a federal military cemetery for those fallen in conflicts and for heroes of Russian Federation.
Okay.
Well, we have Arlington National Cemetery just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., and very, very close to the Pentagon.
Right.
I think about 400,000, the remains of 400,000 soldiers from all wars rest there. That would be the equivalent, but it's not nearly so extensive as Seoul National Cemetery.
Mm-hmm. One of the arguments here in South Korea is that the country has way too many persons of merit. Do you think we have too many?
I think that 800,000 figure goes back to 1945, perhaps, when
including independence.
When
activists.
Korea was freed from the Japanese colonial rule, and for all I know, it goes back further than that. When you can include the people who opposed Japanese rule and fought against the Japanese.
It does include independence activists.
Right. So it's a huge number, but I think we have to say it's just a different system. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't criticize it. I would say it's the way Koreans chose to honor people. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it's a bad system. Maybe other countries should emulate the system and should adopt the same system.
And it also reflects the modern history of the country, right? You mentioned it was very chaotic, and you also had the pro-democracy movement. Yeah. And probably just 30 years ago, they wouldn't have been worshipped. And now, it's basically always changing sides, and then of course the Korean War. It's after the Second World War, it's the most bloody war that has ever been fought. So of course, there are many people who should be honored
because of the chaotic history.
위대한 독립운동의 정신은 민주화와 경제 발전으로 되살아나 오늘의 대한민국을 만들었습니다. 젊음을 나라에 바치고 이제 고령이 되신 독립유공자와 참전 유공자에 대한 예우를 강화하겠습니다.
Korea's Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs confirmed that the benefits received by persons of national merit have been expanded since the Moon Jae-in administration came into power. What kind of state support measures are in place in Russia for persons of merit?
Not so much, at least not so much as in Korea. The heroes of the national heroes that have been awarded by Order of a Hero of Russian Federation, they or their families get pension. That is roughly an equivalent of maybe $500 every month.
Okay.
And when they retire, they also get like 4 times higher basic pension.
Okay.
And basically that is it.
What's the size of the number of people eligible to receive that benefit?
I think around between 10 to 20 people receive this order every year.
Okay.
So not so many.
Not so many. And what about for war veterans?
Well, if we speak about the World War II veterans, every year there's less and less of them left. But they they got a pension that is higher than usual. It is about 2 times higher. As for example, my grandfather, who also participated in the World War II, he was getting $600 payments every month, and the usual pension is around $300. And also a few years ago, well, maybe 10 years ago, President Putin ordered that those veterans who do not have their own place to live, they would get a free apartment from the state.
Okay, free accommodation
Yeah,
provided
right.
by the state.
Yes.
Okay, what about in Germany, Fabian?
So of course you get special benefits if you served as a president, if you served as a scientist or a government official, but there's no like merit system that's an equivalent to here. Like in South Korea, like you mentioned, up to 2 million won per month, basically. But you know, in Germany, the social security system is already very wide and also already very high. So it's not that you're eligible for any extra services by, I don't know, for example, serving for your country in a war. Yeah.
Okay, and in the US?
Well, you know, we don't really have this merit system that you have here in Korea. The government officials get, in my view, quite generous pensions. They're quite well taken care of. Military people get pensions, quite good pensions. If they serve 20 years, they join at the age of 18, they're out in 38, and they're getting half pay for the rest of their life. Stay in for 30 years, and they get 2/3 pay. You know, they're well taken care of, but we don't have this system of this national merit system. We do have medals of freedom that are given out by the White House, presidential medals,
Right.
To various extremely distinguished figures. I think they only give about 10 of them a year.
Right.
Certainly they count for a lot, but we don't have the system whereby sons and daughters also receive benefits or preference for going to universities or anything like that. So it's very different here, and it's very interesting how what Korea does.
Well, actually in Germany you also have that system, like for example academics, poets, they would receive the Medal of Honor. But that's actually not a financial merit, but more like an honor. Yeah.
Now, the Korean government provides benefits to the children of national patriots and persons of merit as well, including healthcare, education, and employment as well.
독립운동가와 그 후손들이 국가의 예우를 받기까지는 해방이 되고도 오랜 시간이 걸렸습니다. 애국이 보상받고, 정의가 보상받고, 원칙이 보상받고, 정직이 보상받는 나라를 다 함께 만들어 나갑시다.
There are some controversies regarding this, so let's find out how the Korean public feel about this.
저는 국가유공자 자녀분들이 그 혜택을 받는 게 되게 좀 당연하다고 생각이 되는 게 그분들은 우리 나라를 위해서 좀 헌신하시고 희생하신 그 결과를 좀 지금은 잘 인정을 못 받고 있잖아요.
예, 기본적으로는 찬성합니다. 다만 가산점을 얼마나 주느냐는 좀 세밀하게 디테일하게 그 등급을 나눠가지고 합당한 거를 해야 된다고 봅니다.
혜택을 받아 마땅하다고 생각을 하는데 이제 막상 취업 전선에 뛰어든 청년들한테는 되게 부당하게 느껴질 수도 있을 것 같고.
그래도 국가 유공자분들께서 국가에 대해 헌신을 많이 하셨으니까 그 유공자분들께 자식분들께도 그 정도의 혜택은 조금 더 주어지는 게 좋지 않을까.
Were you aware of the level of benefits provided to the children and family members of patriots and veterans?
Actually, I was very surprised when I learned about that, and I'm a little bit skeptical of that system because, I mean, you said like who serves the country, but for example, a teacher serves the country, a nurse serves the country, the person who cleans up, the trash in front of my house. I mean, that's also serving the country.
So you think the definition should be perhaps revised?
I would wish that, for example, people would receive a basic pension where they could get by, not really depending whether they were a soldier or just had a normal job.
How are war veterans, or their families rather, how are the families of war veterans supported in Russia?
In some cases, you can get a 50% discount on your utility bills.
Okay.
Like you can pay less for electricity, and you also can have some other minor things, like you can come to a bank or any governmental office and you do not need to queue, you can go first because
You don't need to stand in line, even
right.
if you're a child of the veteran? Or are you talking about the veteran
No,
himself?
it's only for the veterans and maybe for their spouses. But
Do you also question the fairness of such a policy?
Well, again, as a foreigner, I hesitate to pronounce judgment on with the Korean system. I will say clearly, this system provides tremendous incentive for people to serve in the armed forces or the police or the fire department. But I do think that there are many other people who don't necessarily serve in the armed forces who also,
Deserve to be honored.
But then Korea has this system of recognizing people of merit. We don't have that system in the States. We don't have an equivalent of that system.
Family members of veterans provided with any benefits?
Yes, they would get the veterans' pension.
Family members as well?
The wife, children, they would continue to get the pension that their husband was getting before he passed away. The pensions that the veterans get, the fact that their wives can go on getting pensions.
Or their husbands, yeah. Right. The vast majority of the 180,000 remains here at the Seoul National Cemetery are that of soldiers. Men and women in uniform risk their lives in the event of a conflict, but many critics say that the public's perception and treatment of soldiers falls short of where they should be.
국가를 위해 전쟁터에 나가 목숨을 걸고 싸운 참전 유공자들의 명예수당이 이등병 월급 수준에도 못 미친다고 하는 것은 국가적으로 부끄러운 일입니다.
Now, many countries around the world, they reserve the highest level of respect and honor for men and women in uniform who risked and sometimes gave their lives in service of their nation. How are military occupations perceived in your country?
like in the Soviet times, the military profession was very honorable and very well paid. And then after the Soviet Union fell apart, for about 20 years there was this gap and nobody wanted to be the military because it was low funding and people saw a lot of other opportunities rather than going to the military. But recent years, I think the Russian government is trying to rebuild the armed forces and the reputation. The military salaries are drastically increased, and I think nowadays it's more and more people want to join the army, and it's prestigious, well paid, and yeah.
Okay, what about in Germany, Fabian?
It's actually very complicated because, how does a nation deal with that historic guilt? Now the next generation, or actually also my generation, we have not experienced the war like first hand, but even like our parents not, but our grandparents maybe, and so now it's really changing. But of course, not every German was a war criminal or whatever. But still, I don't see the need or necessity of like commemorating fallen soldiers, veterans. I think this patriotism is maybe, it's not needed actually.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that is the sentiment of the young people in Germany right now?
Patriotism is a good thing, it's a natural thing, I can understand that, but patriotism can also quickly turn into nationalism. And in Germany, for example, you don't see like flag waving people, except for football or like some sport events. Among the political far right, they want to push for like, oh, why can't we be proud also of our fallen soldiers? I'm actually skeptical, as you know.
Last year, during the first Pyongyang-Washington summit, the two sides agreed to repatriate the newly discovered remains of fallen American soldiers. Returning the remains of the war dead has always been an important issue for the US government, and the country even maintains an independent agency whose sole objective is to recover missing military personnel. Why does the US put so much emphasis in recovering and repatriating its war dead from countries abroad?
There's always a belief in battle that you should recover the dead. There's a great deal of effort goes into retrieving bodies lost in Vietnam, Korea, World War II, and so forth. And that seems to be a very deep-seated belief. So they made an incredible show out of the return of remains under the agreement that was reached between President Trump and Kim Jong-un in June of last year.
Right.
They made an incredible show out of bringing back 55 sets of bones. So far, they've only been able to confirm the identities of 6 or 7 of those sets of bones. They do have this agency which works full-time on remains. So there's a huge amount of money invested in this. North Korea, last I heard, quite recently, hasn't even responded to inquiries from this agency.
Am I sensing a bit of cynicism in the extent of this effort?
Well, I'm not sure who's being cynical. Maybe I'm being a little cynical. And it's a tremendous public relations exercise. And again, the fact that they invest so much in it shows that they really hope to get a return on the investment in terms of support for the armed forces and for the Pentagon. So, in my view, it may be overdone.
Actually, it really surprises me that there's still so much interest in that topic. I can tell you a cynical story.
That topic of?
Getting the remains of
back.
bodies. I mean, it's 70 years ago almost. A good friend of mine, he was stationed at the DMZ. He used to be a US soldier, and sometimes he was negotiating with the North Korean side on, returning fallen war heroes from the Korean War, like US soldiers, and sometimes they would cheat them, the remains turned out to be fake, and it was always a huge hassle. And also he told me the US military actually paid huge sums of money for each remain.
So we've been talking about the concept of remembrance and paying honor to the country's patriots and heroes. If you were to summarize today's discussions as a news headline, how would you do it?
Views differ sharply on how to treat fallen heroes and national heroes as well.
Okay, Fabian.
Okay, you don't have to be a war hero to be remembered and worshipped.
Controversy remains about benefits for people of national merit.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. Thank you. At the memorial tower of this whole national cemetery, there's an inscription that reads, "This is where the spirit of our people lies, forever accompanying the nation wherever it goes. The sun and moon shall forever protect these grounds." Now, the month of June here in South Korea is Memorial Month, a good time for us to reflect on the country's history, the sacrifices made by the country's patriots, and how better to honor them. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.